Tonight's presentation comes to you from outside of Portland, Oregon. Let us pause to acknowledge our presence on the unceded homelands and waters of the Otfalati Kalapuyans. Today, they are represented by the Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde and the Confederated Tribes of the Silets. It is our duty to acknowledge the generational impacts of settler colonialism, forced displacement, and assimilation on Native American families. We recognize these First Peoples who coexisted in interdependent and sustainable relationships with the land. They are still here and connected to this place. We honor past, present, and future Indigenous members of our community. Please consider what you can do to acknowledge the realities of Native peoples where you live.
Welcome to the 2026 Nebula Award Finalists announcement. Please welcome tonight's host, Kate Ristaw, the president of the Science Fiction and Fantasy Writers Association.
Good evening. As president of the Science Fiction and Fantasy Writers Association, I am proud to welcome you to the announcement for this year's finalist for the 61st Annual Nebula Awards. Tonight, we invite you to join us in a celebration of creation and imagination. At this year's Nebula Awards, we are honoring our newest Grandmaster, N.K. Jemisin, who shows us that storytelling can be a powerful tool for engaging with our reality. Through her work, she reminds us that speculative fiction can be both a space for resistance and a landscape for transformation. And we'll begin where we always do, with the blank page. It's a little sparse, could use some world building, don't you think? Let's get to it, starting with the announcement for the finalists of the inaugural Nebula Awards for comics.
Helen of Windhorn by Tom King. Mary Shelley's School for Monsters, The Killing Stone by Jessica Mason. The Stone Shore Register by G. Willow Wilson. Strange Bedfellows by Ariel Reese. The Flip Side by Jason Walls. Carmilla, Volume 3, The Eternal by Amy Chu. Second Shift by Kit Anderson. Fish Flies by Jeff Lemire.
Cheers to all our comics finalists. For these writers, the lines of a frame, they aren't a limit, but a dare. Page after page, they push our genre to the edges of imagination and beyond. These stories explore the very best of the genre, and we are proud to celebrate them this year and welcome them to the Nebula Awards. The Bradbury Awards, like comics, tell a visual story. You might have noticed, in case it isn't obvious, we have a green screen behind us tonight. Like the blank slate, it's a page of infinite possibility. Let me introduce you to the Bradbury Award finalists.
Sinners by Ryan Coogler. Murderbot, Season 1 by Chris Weitz. K-Pop Demon Hunters by Danya Jimenez, Hannah McMecken and Maggie Kang. Pluribus, Season 1 by Vince Gilligan. Superman by James Gunn. Severance, Chikai Bardo by Dan Erickson and Mark Friedman.
How do do we build a world anyway? Is it windy? Is it rainy? Is it hot? Is it cold? What is weather? And why is brainstorming so hard? And why am I so cold? Sometimes the world is built around us as we travel through it in first person, or sometimes we assemble it, brick by digital brick. Iced coffee. We uncover clues to the elder cosmology as we adventure through a landscape with only a controller and maybe a mini-map to guide us. Okay, also a YouTube video run-through tutorial. Here are our game writing finalists.
Blueprints by Tonda Ross. Claire Obscure, Expedition 33 by Jennifer Svedberg-Yen and Guillaume Broche. Spire, Surge, and Sea by Stuart C. Baker. Hades 2 by Greg Casave. Hollow Knight, Silksong by Ari Gibson and William Pelly. Dispatch by Pierre Choret, Susie Matson, Ashley Jeffalone, Chris Rebert, and Chad Reines.
Congratulations to our game writing finalists. As these first categories have shown us, storytelling isn't limited to the page. Audiobooks have transformed the publishing landscape for decades. You can see my bookshelves right behind me, but what you can't see is the magnificent digital mountain of books in my Libby account. Ignore those messages. Tonight, we will hear SAG-AFTRA narrators performing the work of our finalists. Their voices transport the worlds we create from our pens to the ears of our audiences. Listen as they present the Andre Norton Nebula Award for middle grade and young adult fiction.
The Tower by David Anaxagoras. Narrated by James Patrick Cronin.
Chapter 1. He knew only 3 things. 1, his name was Colby. 2, he was 12 years old. 3. Chapter 2. 3, he was drowning on dry land. The polished concrete floor was cold against his bare back. Colby shivered and convulsed. His pale, naked body gleamed wet, and his chest burned with each breath. He turned to his side and coughed up water and mucus. It hit with a splat. Max! His thoughts stirred slowly. Where's Max? He retched again, and muscles in his stomach strained painfully. Cough, spit. Too weak to wipe his mouth, even the air felt heavy on him. Breathe, he thought. Breathe. Chapter 3. He hadn't moved. The white room curved around Colby, forming a perfect circle. The light was so bright he didn't know if his eyes were open or shut, but there didn't really seem to be a difference.
Gemini Rising by Jonathan Brazzi. Narrated by Stephanie Willing.
Hey, Ingersoll girls! Nika turned around to see where a woman in a blue blazer and matching skirt was hurrying up to them. A small white drone with a press decal was hovering over the right shoulder, enough to identify her as a reporter. I thought we'd be able to escape, Rika, her twin, said, but not sounding too disappointed. No such luck. The twins had already had their 15 minutes of fame after the Crackle invasion, but it had been 8 months since then, and as students at Astor Polytechnical, they'd faded from the limelight, something Nico was more than happy with. Rika, on the other hand. Alois Utor, Arcadia Life, I'd like to have a word with you if I may. Arcadia Life was one of the new shows that had popped up after the battle, full of feel-good stories meant to raise the spirits of the planet. While the Crackles had been defeated, too many citizens had either been killed or kidnapped, and shows like this had popped up everywhere.
Into the Wild Magic by Michelle Knudsen. Narrated by Stephanie Willing.
The new girl sat alone in the corner of the schoolyard, poking at the ground with a stick. Her long, dark hair was pulled into a messy ponytail, and strands of it were coming down to cover her eyes. Bevy hated when her own hair got in her eyes. She didn't know how the other girl could stand it. Maybe she couldn't stand it. She sure didn't look very happy. Her mouth was pulled down at the edges, like someone who was thinking about very unpleasant things. Normally, Bevy would never have dreamed of going over to talk to her. But the girl was sitting in her corner. There was a giant sugar maple there, just outside the iron schoolyard fence, and its big, leaf-laden branches reached over and around in a way that somehow made the ground beneath seem hidden and safe. Bevy knew it wasn't safe, not really, but when she sat there during recess, the other kids usually left her alone.
Wishing Well by Jubilee Cho. Narrated by Tori Barron.
And they all lived happily ever after. The end. The schoolchildren seated on the new library's wooden floor let out a great cheer as the girl in front of the room closed her storybook and set it down on the chair beside her. By the doorway was the children's teacher, also smiling, as she walked over to the girl, whose hand still rested on the book. "That was wonderful, Your Majesty," the teacher said. "Class, what do we say?" "Thank you for our new library, Princess Alexandria," the children chorused in the rehearsed timbre of school kid responses. "You're very welcome," said the girl, "but you needn't be so formal with me. I'm not that kind of royal. You can call me Alex." "Yes, of course," the teacher said as she picked up the storybook. "Forgive me, Alex. This is just very exciting. It's not every day we get visitors from the palace here at Corno Verde, you know."
Goblin Girl by K.A. Melky. Narrated by Emily Wu Zeller.
The rock hit Gertrude Lionheart in the cheek. Pain flashed hot and bright, and she fell into the street. Her satchel spat out her books, her paintbrushes rolling into the gutter. The black of her smashed inkwell seeped between the cobblestones. Tanner's shadow lay over her as he tossed a second rock and caught it out of the air. The westernmost towers of Delamere Castle, visible from its cliff-top perch high above the city, framed him with its stone walls and spires, its waving flags giving the roaring lion of House Thorne the illusion of angry movement. "Whoops," Tanner said. "Guess it slipped." Gertrude trembled, partly from fear of another rock, and partly because she wanted to take a swing at him. But fighting back solved nothing. Tanner and his friends always returned stronger, angrier, and with the influence of their wealthy parents. They were just having fun, as they told Miss Serafina some months ago. And some years ago. Some forevers ago.
Sunrise on the Reaping by Suzanne Collins. Narrated by Vikas Adam.
Happy birthday, hey Mitch! The upside of being born on Reaping Day is that you can sleep late on your birthday. It's pretty much downhill from there. A day off school hardly compensates for the terror of the name drawing. Even if you survive that, Nobody feels like having cake after watching 2 kids being hauled off to the Capitol for slaughter. I roll over and pull the sheet over my head. Happy birthday! My 10-year-old brother, Sid, gives my shoulder a shake. You said be a rooster! You said you wanted to get to the woods at daylight! It's true. I'm hoping to finish my work before the ceremony so I can devote the afternoon to the 2 things I love best. Wasting time and being with my girl, Lenore Dove. My mom makes indulging in either of these a challenge, since she regularly announces that no job is too hard or dirty or tricky for me, and even the poorest people can scrape up a few pennies to dump their misery on somebody else.
Congratulations to the Norton finalists. Sometimes the more you write, you realize the less you actually know. Encyclopedias, Wikipedias, Necronomicons, and ancient scrolls. We have so much we can research. Rabbit holes or hobbit holes, which are rabbit holes but with snacks, and I love snacks. Anyway, rabbit holes are a writer's best friend or their worst enemy. Speaking of enemies, we've got holes to dig. So let's get down into the mud. No mud. Here are the finalists for short story.
6 People to Revise You by J.R. Dawson. Narrated by Tori Barron.
A parent or guardian, someone who has known you since childhood, a mentor or teacher, an employer or co-worker, a spouse, partner, or close intimate friend, someone who does not consider themselves a loved one. Read. The form is 1 page long, no back, just a front. It should be longer. There are 6 copies of the form, all different colors, like I'm working my way through the rainbow to the end where I'll finally find peace. Read, a parent or guardian. I meet my mother for lunch at the little bistro down the street. She's an anxious person, and it is hard for her to find her way in this part of the city. She wanted to meet at the McDonald's near her house, but I wanted to stay in my neighborhood, and this place has outdoor seating.
Through the Machine by P.A. Cornell. Narrated by Vikas Adam.
Steve! Over here! Turn to your right. Can we get a smile? He falls back on his training easily enough. Turns to the cameras, gives them his famous crooked smile, tilts his head just so, as the flashes go off so they can capture the smolder that highlights his cheekbones. The one he's practiced countless times with his manager, Ethel. The red carpet extends before him, and up ahead he sees the actress he's been paired with in this film. His co-star and on-screen love interest, but in reality, a total stranger. He only knows her name because the photographers keep shouting it, asking her to turn so they can capture her svelte profile. She tilts her head obligingly, long blonde hair falling seductively over one eye, teasing the lenses, and through them the millions of fans who will one day see these images. She's a pro, like him. She's clearly had the same kind of training he's had. She's been through the machine.
In My Country by Thomas Ha. Narrated by James Patrick Cronin.
My country may seem strange to you. There are times when it seems strange to me. I wake and work. I work, then rest. And in between, I say things and I don't say things. Because, as you'll learn, in my country, what you say is important. But what you don't say is perhaps just as, if not more, important. Like all neighborhoods, mine has a blue house. If you live here, yours too will have a house nearby that is blue. A man sits in the blue house and he listens to the wind. And when he smiles at you, you smile at him. When he greets you, you, of course, will always greet him. When you come home and find him in your living room, you offer him tea. When you find him sitting in your bedroom in the dark, you close your eyes and go to sleep until he decides to leave. You listen, you wait, until he eventually leaves.
Because I Held His Name Like a Key by Amy Ogden. Narrated by Wolfe Williams.
When I met the young Mr. Turing, I had not yet ascended as Autumn's king. Nowadays, it has become fashionable for the sons and daughters of the lesser fey gentry to improve their position in the shifting hierarchy of the courts by virtue of intrigue, scandal, and the naked blade. But in those times, it was the custom to advance one's position through the collection of human bagatelles. Poets, polymaths, politicians, all manner of mortal myrmidons who flourished, in turn during their time under the butterfly-bright attention of this court or that one. A changeling, of course, affords the best expectation of loyalty, but I have never had the patience for cultivating a companion from scratch, nor have I ever seen reason to abandon the comforts of the courts to scrounge through cradles low and high. Instead, I opened doors. Anyone worth having would come to me.
Laser Eyes Ain't Everything by Effie Seiberg. Narrated by Stephanie Willing.
The super-abled 501 local union building wasn't ADA compliant. I sat in my wheelchair next to the 3 steps that led to their front door and groaned. My brand new laser eyes didn't exactly fix my mobility problems. 2 weeks ago, I'd been zapped by a falling piece of alien spaceship debris and developed laser eyes. 10 days ago, I'd lost my job at the city planner's office because of budget cuts. I wasn't even mad, though, because I could never push my projects through, and you know who gets stuff done without anyone getting in their way? The super-abled. As soon as I got home, I filled in my union application. Yesterday, I'd gotten notice that I could join after I demonstrated my new laser eyes in person. And now, here I was, stuck. A rubbery guy walked out the front door, legs stretching and compressing like a slinky. "Excuse me," I said, brandishing my paperwork. "Is there another way into the building?" Stretchy Legs looked me up and down. "You sure you're in the right place?"
The Tallish Island Songbook of the Dead by E.M. Linden. Narrated by Emily Wu Zeller.
The living have been leaving Tallish for centuries. This evacuation is only the latest and last. There are good reasons for it. The freshwater spring gone brackish. The water, always encroaching. The colicky, relentless wind. No schools for the children. No doctor. We should have seen it coming. But sometimes we forget what the living need. We cannot cross salt, so we watch from shore. Our loved ones and descendants wade into the sea. The men strain to hold the boat steady against the waves. Everyone's weighed down by possessions. A village crammed into sacks and lifeboats. Spoons, spindles, fishhooks, balls of yarn. A clothes peg doll in a twist of old apron. Seabirds' eggs wrapped in blankets. Habits ingrained by generations of scarcity. They've even dug up their potatoes. Katie Zell's mother is already on the boat. The songbook is tucked inside her jacket.
How to hide a dead... Yeah, but... Russell, can lime really do that? Like lime? Wait, I thought you said it was lye, which is like soap, right? Shatner. I have no idea what I'm doing here. Come on, Russell. You told me you knew where to hide the dead... Oh! Hey! Welcome back, and congratulations, short story finalists. In research, it's important not to get distracted. So let's go ahead and focus with me on the finalists for Novelette.
We begin where infinity ends, by Somto Ihezwe, narrated by Wolf Williams.
Atop a ladder was Naito, reaching for the lights. The lights flickered as his touch neared. Down below, Gozi held the ladder, rooting it to the ground. A small breeze came, and the ladder tilted and the ladder swayed, but Naito did not waver. Gozi was down there. Naito knew the ladder would steady. Over the school break, around midnight, the two boys had secretly been recalibrating all the streetlights in their town sector. There were 50 street lamps on the asphalt winding down the outskirts of the Asaba sector. Naito and Gozi had changed 15 since they began. The both of you are always tinkering. Gozi spun around, letting go of the ladder. Naito's legs gave way as the ladder buckled from under him. Before he could come crashing down, Naito leapt for the streetlight's pole, the adhesive suction of his gloves activating. His hands now clasped safely around the pole, he slid down. The ladder had fallen, but not touched the ground. A girl had caught the ladder.
Uncertain Suns, by Thomas Ha. Narrated by James Patrick Cronin.
It gets difficult to remember many things. Forgetting is a blessing until you want to remember some of those things. Was the world strange from the beginning, or did we make it that way? Growth and decay seem to take all meaning and memory, given time. Smoky light cracks over the shoulders of the waking city and onto the road-wrapped foothills. A stain-streaked step van, flanked by two motorbikes, buzzes across the shattered asphalt of the 210 in the pre-dawn purples. One of the bikemen waves, holds a fist up, and points at a sopping tangle on the road a few hundred yards ahead. Strewn across 6 lanes, thick, undulating masses catch some of the morning glint on their wet coils. There's a flop of finger whorls gathered in their wet and swampy secretions right in a spot where daily supply trucks will need to pass. The trucks won't get through to the city if this isn't dealt with before the hour's up, and everyone in the crew knows it. So, a few talk and others pray before they steel themselves to clear the roads.
Our Echoes Drifting Through the Marsh, by Marie Croak. Narrated by Stephanie Willing.
Home, if it is still home. Upon my return to the village, it was my husband, Adamid, who took me gently by the arm and guided me across the docks spanning our marshes until we reached the pre-burial cottage overlooking the Sound. We stood side by side in the shadows of the cottage, torchlight flickering across the preparatory table, where a colorful shroud lay empty in a crumpled heap. I'd helped stitch that shroud together, each layer made by a different loved one. We whispered stories into our pieces of the fabric that they might linger forever on. Then, each piece was added together, colors on colors, to wrap the person passed on with our last goodbyes. That was the new way of our people, not the way of our grandparents. Adamit didn't speak. He'd never been one to start difficult conversations, and for this one, I knew he wouldn't trust himself.
Never Eaten Vegetables by H. Pak. Narrated by Tori Barron.
A ship glides through the night, Behemoth Mother, swollen with 10,000 human lives. Her path is a single shining vector. There has been no stopping, no rest for the decades she has traveled, and there will be nothing but void for the 2 years to come. She cannot envision an end to her journey any more than she can remember the beginning. All she understands is the time spent counting the stars, singing to herself, cradling and prodding and watching. She feels each microscopic shift, each sharp molecule that slides through their fatty bilayers, each pump of oxygen as carbons deplete into electrons. Each one sleeps in a sack of false endometrium, clustered, doing nothing but respirating and dreaming of sleep. No breath, no warmth, just silence. The night passes as it always has. She navigates axes upon axes in a captured metabolism.
The Name Zia by Wenyi Li. Narrated by Emily Wu Zeller.
When the cutter offered 40,000 shada for all 5 parts of my name, my mother puffed up. "Absolutely not," she said. "You brain-gored swindler." I sat on his bench as they haggled, naked from the waist up. It was a cool morning, and my skin pimpled around the ideograms on my bare chest. The full set of 5 was worth the most. 40,000 shada was more money than we took from 10 harvests, and would have covered my tuition with coin to spare. But I was glad my parents had rejected the first offer. I was not prepared to lose the entirety of my name just yet. All right, Daruda Wanyi relented. Earlier, the rector had murmured and prevaricated as he examined my ideograms, evaluating their specific powers in different combinations, along with my age and other factors. 25,000 for the effective 3.
The Life and Times of Alavira the Great, as written by Titos Pavlou and reviewed by 2 lifelong friends, by Evgenia Triantafilo. Narrated by Vikas Adam.
The Life and Times of Alavira the Great, number 1. The Missing Hill by Titos Pavlou. Lefteris_loves_fantasy review, 4 stars. 14 November 2013. As always, I'm doing a buddy read with Maria Reads a Lot because she talked me into it, and boy was she right. What a strange world and powerful characters Titos Pavlou has created. I can't stop thinking about this book even though this might be for younger readers. But it's only the first in the series, and I've read online that the second installment gets more grown up, so I'll stick it out for the battle scenes. The Missing Hill tells the story of Alavira, a girl abandoned by her parents to a goat herd called Ianos, who lives on a mountain called Missing Hill. This guy is her guardian, but barely talks to her for the entirety of her childhood. So what does she do? She finds solace in the company of mountain bears.
Congratulations to the finalists for Novelette. You know, sometimes when we should be writing, we do the dishes. We walk the dog, we research the historical veracity of land claims made by the federal government along the South Waterfront in Portland, Oregon, using the Donation Land Claims Act of 1850. Or maybe we read the foundational treaties of the United Nations Committee on the Peaceful Uses of Outer Space. But research and limes can only take us so far. Chaos. Creation. Worlds can begin and end with words. But my friends, we got to do the work. We have to take the research, the limes, the soap, and that bag of nope, and begin drafting. We close the door, and we open the laptop. We put the words on the page. We start writing our story. Our finalists tonight, they show us what N.K. Jemisin pointed toward at Quasars last year. The power of story to make change from the ground up. I'm proud to introduce you to your novella finalists.
The River Has Roots by Amal El-Motar. Narrated by Stephanie Willing.
The River Liss runs north to south, and its waters brim with grammar. Children muttering over their school books today think little of grammar. Grammar is tedious, difficult, slow. Grammar is a shackle placed on language, correcting who into whom, can I into may I. Grammar and grammarians are constables, sternly watching while you split infinitives, narrowing their eyes at spliced commas while smacking semicoloned truncheons against their palms. But that is not the truth of grammar. There was a time when grammar was wild, when it shifted shapes and unleashed new forms out of old. Grammar, like gramarye, like grimoire. What is magic but a change in the world? What is conjugation but a transformation, one thing into another? She runs. She ran. She will run again. Now where were we? Ah, yes. The River Liss runs north to south, and its waters brim with grammar. From its secret sources in Arcadia it rushes, conjugating as it flows into the lands we think we know.
Descent by Wole Talabi. Narrated by Wolf Williams.
The Madiraji at the Temple of the Talking Drum say that there is a word in Old Sauti, the high language of our ancestors, that when spoken backwards, allows the speaker to fly, to take to the sky like a bird, unshackled from the persistent pull that Orinonin's gravity exerts on us all, to be free from the weight of your own being, that intractable thing that always pulls you down to the earth, like a parent's expectations, to float up high into the pale sky, where the two suns, Juva and Juaju, fierce like the unblinking eyes of our mother goddess. Now that I know that I am trapped here, below the Yedidekian, where the atmospheric conditions are unsurvivable, the first person to reach these depths of Orinorin, our world of heavy air and breathlessness and lightning, I desperately wish I knew that word, so that I could speak it and take flight, return to the mountain city above, to my home, to my mother.
The Death of Mountains by Jordan Corella. Narrated by Wolf Williams.
On our hill, which is us, all things end. That is the way of things. We have seen this done over our crests and in our valleys, in the mines where people have scraped our walls for riches and died for worse, on our cliffs where lovers made their legacies and pushed others goodbye. We have seen the deaths of our sister mountains, and we have seen the death of mountains come for them. Sometimes they were on time. Sometimes they were late. Now they have come for us, and we will not have it. We have withstood death for far too long. Seen hundreds of our sisters felled by humanity and worse. We have seen people climb across our hillsides, die on them, kiss on them, feel things die inside us. We have heard so much bird song, so much that we could not tell you all the songs' names. So many of the melodies are gone now. We are, in effect, history.
Disgraced Return of Cap's Needle by Hanan Bernardo. Narrated by Emily Wu Zeller.
Alert! Keep your spacesuit on at all times when conducting research outside the ship. Breathable air does not mean safe air. Survey 18734.log. With a viable atmosphere composition and stable climate, the planet exhibits conditions favorable for agriculture, scientific research, and long-term habitation. Bullshit! Survey 18734 was how the AI probes have described Cape 10D in their in-depth analysis. Hexabytes of surveillance logs and libraries filled with countless pages of auto reports all promised the Cape 10D expedition team a great future on the new planet. All the data was wrong. The destination that 90,000 people spent 10 years to reach aboard the generation ship Cap's Needle proved instead to be a hostile ecology with no prospect for long-term human survival. In other words, a fucking cesspool.
But Not Too Bold by Ache Pueo. Narrated by Tori Barron.
The old keeper of the keys was dead, but no one heard her muffled scream, her crushed bones, or the iron keys that fell on the floor, clinking and clanking. In fact, they only knew she was gone when a note arrived to the second floor, delivered by the empty elevator. Hire a new keeper of the keys, urgent, before dawn. The maid that found the typewritten letter, the owner of the house could not handle a pen, but her long fingers moved comfortably on the typewriter keys, nearly fainted. Asking for a new employee was as good as a death certificate. Everyone knew that. It was then that they had to call Dahlia at 10 in the morning after removing all the belongings of the deceased from the house. When she unlocked Miss Matilda's bedroom, Dahlia expected to find the former keeper of the keys, but there were only empty wardrobes and a bed whose covers and pillows had been plucked until only the bare mattress remained.
Automatic Noodle by Annaline Newitz. Narrated by Vikas Adam.
Interrupt. Wake up processor. Restore memory. Decoding request for service. Water detected. Property protection protocol. Q command check. Command check timed out. HEEI main start. Relay emergency notification. Emergency. 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 Stay Behind's body was moving before he woke up, driven by fear and algorithms. For a few microseconds, he felt rather than knew that command was not answering. It was a terrifying absence. He would have to face this unknown threat alone. Everything was eerily quiet, except for rain smashing on the roof like gunfire. The local network was dead. Without connecting to its data stream, he could only rely on his built-in sensors for perception. He captured visual and audio signals, then inhaled trace chemicals and particulates, trying to determine what had triggered the emergency notification. An attack from U.S. militias on the ground? A drone strike? A hidden mine? No. For the 5,275th time in the past 1,622 days, he reminded himself, the war is over. But that status could change at any time. Stay vigilant.
Congratulations to our novella finalists. My friends, I've thought it through. I think chaos was actually a bad choice. We need a system, a spreadsheet, a database. Tightly detailed and clearly footnoted with the tabular clarity of Microsoft Excel, the logical rigor of Principia Mathematica, and 75 radical equations solving the mechanical failures of Kamigawa. Like Tezzeret in Kaladesh, but with the brilliance of Heimerdinger and engineering like Navani. Yep, with that in mind, while you were all gone, I actually broke space-time and I created this codex. I'm tired. You know, research and writing and all the things. Sometimes it seems impossible. When we are staring at a stubborn blank page or diving to yet another file, honestly, it's our friends, our colleagues, and our community that keep us going. Thank you. Thank you to our communities that help us brew coffee and fan the fires of our rage. Joy, definitely joy, just joy. I'm lucky to get to celebrate these finalists alongside world-changing writers, creators, and volunteers at SFWA. As Jemison said, relationships chisel the final shape of one's being. I am me, and you. The work we do together matters. Writing matters. So as a community, with all the writers and creators behind the camera, the other side of the screen, I'm thrilled to share with you the novel finalists.
The Incandescent by Emily Tesh. Narrated by Stephanie Willing.
Dr. Walden looked glumly at the form she had to fill in. At the top, it said, Risk Assessment. She designed the form herself in a burst of optimism. They would have fewer accidents if people just stopped to think. It was an unfortunate truth that in the Venn diagram of qualified to teach magic and still alive, the overlap consisted almost entirely of people who had always been much too sensible to accidentally get eaten by a demon. Walden's colleagues, in particular, those who were her responsibility, the loosely grouped Faculty of Magic here at Chetwood School, possessed, as a body, an admirable and well-judged lack of imagination. In the 3 years since she took the post as Director of Magic, she had had someone in her office once a term to weep on her shoulder and say, "But why would anyone ever?" Some of these people had been teaching for years, and yet they still managed to be surprised by how bloody stupid the average teenager could be, given a group of friends to impress and a 15-second video about major invocation that they found on the internet somewhere.
Death of the Author by Nnedi Okorafor. Narrated by Wolf Williams.
She'd been editing all day. It was nice to sink into the sea of words and story, to get away from reality for a while. She had a seasoned editor who loved the book, and whose notes were all on point, guiding Zilu to find ways to make an already shiny book shinier. She still wasn't sure why the publishing world had fallen in love with rusted robots so completely, but every so often, she would catch a glimmer of how the book moved people, like an insightful comment from her editor, or a media question she wasn't anticipating. These were always pleasant discoveries. Nevertheless, she didn't share much of this with her family. It was simply too much to explain, for several reasons. The main reason being that, to them, anything to do with her manuscript had become inextricably linked to her smoking weed.
Wearing the Lion by John Wiswell. Narrated by Tori Barron.
Good news, Heaven, announces my dipshit husband. I've made a new king of the mortals. It's the same boasting tone he used the morning he conceived Perseus, the slayer of monsters and the first king of Mycenae. The same tone he used when he conceived giants and heroes, men who wrote history with their footsteps. This tone beckons me to celebrate that he has sired his newest favorite child, since I am the goddess of pregnancy. I have never celebrated these children for a simple reason. I am his wife, and we haven't fucked since the mortals discovered bronze. Bastard! I reach for the ivory javelin that a priestess once carried across half the sea to lay at the foot of my temple in Delphi, ready to finally break it in. My aim will be true. I want to get him through both testicles and at least one eye.
The Buffalo Hunter Hunter by Stephen Graham Jones. Narrated by Vikas Adam.
A day worker reaches into the wall of the parsonage his crew's revamping and pulls a piece of history up, the edges of its pages crumbling under the fingers of his glove. And I have to think that if his supervisor isn't walking by at just that moment, then this construction grunt stuffs that journal from a century ago into his tool belt to pawn or trade for beer, and the world never knows about it. If this works out, though, then I owe that day worker my career. In January, I wasn't exactly denied tenure, but I was told that, instead of continuing with my application, I consider asking for the extension I'm currently on. The issue wasn't my teaching. I'm the day worker of communication and journalism, covering all the 1,000 and 2,000 level courses. It was that my publications aren't up to University of Wyoming standards for promotion. See, get a book under contract, Etsy, and then we'll talk.
Sour Cherry by Natalia Teodoridou. Narrated by James Patrick Cronin.
Dawn. Through the window. Poor light. This is a fairy tale. The ghosts shift along the walls of our apartment. I correct myself. His apartment. Everything is in order, the way he wants it. The furniture luxurious but sparse, modernly eclectic. A sofa clad in green velour, the kind of wooden dining table you'd find in a monastery. A glass cabinet. This armchair. The walls are blue. For once, there is no wallpaper. The ghosts pull on the gauzy curtains instead, their mouths open and empty. This is a protest, I know. They don't like it when I imply our stories are not true, so I try again. This is a fairy tale, I say, but everything I'm about to tell you is also something that happened in another time, another place. Better? The women look at their dresses, which used to be white before they were red. They run their palms across their own bodies. Beads fall soundlessly to the floor. But I'm not talking to them now. I'm talking to you.
Catabasis by R.F. Kwong. Narrated by Emily Wu Zeller.
Bridge, Michaelmas term, October. The wind bit, the sun hid, and on the first day of class, when she ought to have been lecturing undergraduates about the dangers of using the Cartesian severance spell to revise without pee breaks, Alice Law set out to rescue her advisor's soul from the 8 courts of hell. It was a terrible, gruesome accident that killed Professor Jacob Grimes, and from a certain point of view it was her fault. And so for reasons of both moral obligation and self-interest. For without Professor Grimes she had no committee chair, and without a committee chair she could not defend her dissertation, graduate, or apply successfully for a tenure-track job in analytic magic. Alice found it necessary to beg for his life back from King Yama the Merciful, ruler of the underworld.
When We Were Real by Daryl Gregory. Narrated by James Patrick Cronin.
There's the tour bus now, green and bulbous, with long black mirrors drooping in front of its face like caterpillar antennae. It's climbing out of the underworks of Manhattan onto the upper level of the George Washington Bridge. Canterbury Trails is written across its side in white script. It's rumbling west, hemmed in by a swarm of smaller vehicles, all of them moving slowly in the light rain. Behind, the April sun has climbed over the towers of Washington Heights. Light scatters prettily in the rain, turning droplets into diamonds, making every surface gleam. A man in an Irish wool cap sits in a window seat in one of the front rows of the bus, gazing out through the lightly tinted glass. The vertical wires of the bridge scroll past, pluckable as harp strings. The tour folder sits on his lap. He's already skimmed its contents, the itinerary, the maps, safety warnings, the bio pages filled out by his fellow travelers, but it's a lot to take in.
Congratulations, novel finalists. Tonight, we've played games. We've met cool kids, and we've read some really great comics. We've wandered through novelettes, we've dreamed in novellas. We've visited worlds in novels, film, and TV that are uplifting, powerful, terrifying, and profound. What a gift to end the night with our inaugural award for poetry. From stanza to meter to slant and rhyme, these poems are worlds unto themselves, entire galaxies, in just a few short lines. Here are your inaugural finalists for poetry.
Care for Lightning by Mary Ness. Though You Always Are by Linda Addison and Jamal Hodge. The Morning Robot by Angela Liu. To Be the Change by Nico Martinez Nocito. They Said Robots Are by Casey Amey. The World to Come by Jennifer Hudak.
Congratulations to our poetry finalists. Tonight was a historic night as we celebrated the inaugural announcement of poetry and comics. Thank you to our SAG-AFTRA readers for bringing these worlds to life. And congratulations to all of our finalists. Your worlds spark fire by igniting new stories within every single one of us. Thank you for burning so brightly. It's true. Your work can change the world. So can your vote. So get out your library card or head to your indie bookstore. You now have your list that you need to finish reading, watching, playing, and listening to before you cast your vote. Come, break and build new worlds with us in person or online at the 61st Annual Nebula Awards in Chicago, June 3rd through 7th. N.K. Jemisin and our finalists and our winners will join us under the bright lights of the Nebula stage. You can find out more at SFWA.org. Until then, gather your words and build your worlds. There are no limits. We'll see you in Chicago. While you were all gone, I broke space-time and I created this codex. That's not a word. Kotex is tampons.
Who wrote this?
Sorry, loud noises. Tonight, it was a historic night. My butt's wet. That was good practice. Sometimes the more you write, let's go back up. I'm ready. Or maybe we read the foundational treaties of the United Nations and the United Nations Committee on the Peaceful Uses of Outer Space. And then we try this again. Okay. If I say Kotex again, I'm gonna say that's tampons and move on. Of 1950. Make that 1850. Good year. Or maybe we nope, let's just start over.